Okay, I'm going to turn to the Korean youth now. Travel a great deal, see the world, don't ever be insular, always look for many, many points of view, retain your tradition, the best parts of it.
I would say many things actually begin with honesty.
Grow in your education. Remember that education means also challenging.
Capacity for compassion or empathy that takes you out of yourself.
I found what I'm looking for. I wanted more to see, but I'm happy being
I think I always felt that the thing I liked the most was to read and to learn and to talk and to write. So, life of an academic, basically.
I'm one of the great fortunate people because I actually love getting up in the morning and doing my job. And I take satisfaction, and to me, actually, rather than I could tell you as if it's not a cliche, but I could recite to you various pleasant things that have happened, honors of one kind or another in my life. But it isn't so much that, it's doing what I want to do that seems to me my proudest achievement, actually loving the thing that I do. And that's more important than, to me at least, more important than this particular prize or that particular honor.
I think my greatest achievement will continue for many generations, and that is teaching brilliant students. And they're out there working in part on ideas that they may have gotten from me. So being a teacher is the greatest achievement somebody can have because it continues on.
What I'm proud of myself is that I still have the passion and the energy for doing active research, and I love co-authoring paper with young people, and that keeps me young. And so my greatest achievement is this ongoing love for research and interacting with students, with young people.
I'm very pleased to have had the opportunity to undertake the research and the writing that I've done. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to have such bright and interesting students in courses. It really is for others in the end to judge over time whether your accomplishment is very, very good, or that it's adequate, or however others may judge it. You try as hard as you can. You reflect on your own efforts. You find out what other people are doing.
The students I teach today will be practicing law 50 or 60 years after I'm gone. And that's my great achievement. Lawyers tend not to be able to save lives. Doctors save lives, but when a lawyer can save a life, in my tradition there's a statement from the Talmud that says, "He who saves one human life, it's as if you've saved the whole world." And it feels that way when you save a human life.
How did you motivate yourself to study as a junior high and high school student? What sort of student were you honestly like?
I loved what I was learning. It was open-ended. Nobody told me there was a right answer that has to be discovered. I was told that I have to invent the right answers. I have to create them. I have to search after them and put them together. And so it was a challenge to my mind. And it was very important for my teachers to encourage me not to find the truth with a capital T, but the truthing process, trying to find out how to get to where it was important to get. And I think it's a never-ending process, and I've been engaged in it since I entered college in 1955, which is 51 years ago. I started this, and it hasn't ever ended, and I hope it will never end.
Wow. So I guess you didn't like high school because they were only looking for
The answers.
The answers.
The answers, and the answers were in the Bible, and the answers were in heaven, and the answers were in the books. And I'm never interested in just going through the books and finding answers. I want to use my imagination.
Elementary school and junior high, there was a lot of pressure from my parents. My mother was a teacher, school teacher, so and my grandmother too. So in my family, school was considered extremely important. So I grew up with the idea that doing well at school was absolutely essential. And then I had a couple of classmates who were very important I learned a lot from them. And then in college, when I went to college, I think they are the biggest influence on me has been my classmates, much more than my professor. My professor, I had some good professors and some not so good, but what I really learned from this exceptionally good group of like 50 or 60 young kids like me, they're 18, 19, 20. One thing I say always to students that start a graduate program is that you learn so much.
Not, as they say, not pressure me to do X or Y, not to become an engineer or a doctor, but that my parents took very, very seriously my schooling. And when I came home and said I got an A-, my father would say, really, why not an A? So, of course, I did grow up in exactly that circumstance.
I see a lot of similarity between Jewish family and Korean family.
No, I think there are actually some similarities.
Mm-hmm.
Close families, families that take education very seriously, families that live perhaps excessively with dreams for their children and what they want their children to do and achieve. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a burden for the children, but there are similarities.
My family valued education a good deal. My parents read a lot. They didn't tell us what to study. They simply said, whatever you choose, you need to try to do your best. And they never held up some yardstick based on what everyone else was doing. But they expected us to try to do our best and to care about what we were doing. And so I grew up with that attitude. I tried to do my best at everything, and I soon discovered, as everyone does, that your best at everything is usually not the best. So you begin to discover that it's cultivating your abilities that's important. It's returning to them. It's assimilating. It's the long run of studying, not just the short run that matters. And you don't know exactly where it will lead.
Please describe some formative influences on your educational and professional development thus far. For example, like parents and friends. Who have proved to be your most abiding role models?
My mother was a very important role model for me, although she didn't go to college. The reason she didn't was not because she wasn't very smart. She was very smart. She would have been a brilliant college student. But she would have started college during the Depression. In fact, she went for 1 month during the 1929 Depression and had to leave to help support the family. And so my mother was ambitious for me and pushed me very hard and was my first defense lawyer when I got into trouble in school. My mother was always there defending me, and she taught me how to argue. And my father was a very gentle man who taught me the importance of defending the underdog and always fighting for justice. And then my teachers.
The most important influence was from your mother.
I would say so, yeah. My mother's still alive. She's 92 and a half years old and still hanging in there, still telling me what to do.
I was, looking back on it, very powerfully affected by, I had a succession of wonderful teachers, but perhaps a particularly wonderful teacher in high school who made an impression on me simply by virtue of his intelligence and intensity and sincerity. And at a certain moment, we were reading the play, and this teacher, who seemed to me fantastically intelligent and learned, looked up and said, I've spent a lot of time trying to understand this, and I simply, even now, have no idea what this means. And actually, more than many other things that he said, which were actually full of information of various kinds, that actually stayed with me quite powerfully, that he would encounter something that he didn't understand as a model of a certain kind of critical intelligence and a willingness to grapple with things that you don't completely understand.